and begin broadcasting now. Hi, welcome everyone to today's CSIA partner webinar, Modern Edge Solutions for Remote Site Integration. My name is Colin Hammond and I will be your host today. For those of you who are unfamiliar with CSIA, we are a global nonprofit professional association with over 500 member companies in 40 countries. Our mission is to advance the practice of control system integration to benefit our members and their clients. Our vision is to ensure that manufacturing and process industries everywhere have access to low-risk, safe, and successful application of automation technology. CSIA membership offers members access to resources needed to attain and exceed business goals. To highlight just a few of our many member benefits, CSIA Best Practices Manual guides control system integration companies in the setup and running of a solid company. CSIA's Business Insurance Program offers members an excellent insurance program for business owners, subcontractors, and more. The program includes members from all over the world enjoying the peace of mind that comes with CSIA insurance. Clients in all industries are now seeking integrators with the CSIA certification alongside ISO. They recognize CSIA's certified integrators' commitment to industry standards and business acumen, and as a result, being certified can shorten the sales cycle. CSIA Industrial Automation Exchange is the premier automation guide featuring system integrators and suppliers who provide industrial manufacturing and process automation solutions. For integrators and suppliers, it's a place to market their expertise. Clients will find white papers, case studies, capabilities, contact information, and engage in conversation directly with CSIA members. Please follow CSIA's online events calendar for all upcoming webinars, including both partner webinars and our new Webinar Wednesday series. CSIA's partner webinars are opportunities given to CSIA's industry partners to address hot topics and demonstrate their expertise. You won't want to miss the opportunities to learn from the comfort of your own office or home. And for more information about CSIA, please visit our website or contact us at info@staff.controlsys.org or 847-686-2245. And at this time, I would like to introduce our speaker, Tony Battaglia. From semiconductors to industrial grade hardware, Mr. Battaglia has a wide variety of experience and expertise in a multitude of leading technologies. At FreeWave, he is responsible for the North American sales and go-to market structure to effectively introduce FreeWave's edge compute and RF solutions into a variety of industry segments, including municipalities, utilities, energy, power, industrial automation, and more. Mr. Battaglia has a long history of running national and global sales channels for a variety of commercial, enterprise, and industrial technology solutions, giving him a well-versed background in a variety of market segments. With that, I would like to introduce our speaker. Welcome, Tony.
All right. Thank you, Colin. Much appreciated. Let me get my screen share going. Looks like I need to wait for you to stop yours before I can kick mine on.
There we go.
All right. How's it looking?
Good.
Fantastic. Well, again, Colin, thank you for the introduction. Thank you, everybody, for taking the time this morning to join us here. Again, my name is Tony Battaglia. I'm with FreeWave Technologies. And by means of agenda, this is going to be a pretty high-level discussion. We're a new CSIA member, so we wanted to make sure that we took this opportunity to give members a very brief introduction to FreeWave. Some of you guys may be familiar with us, others maybe not. And then talk at a very high level around edge compute and connectivity options specific to remote site applications. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. So again, this is going to be very high level by design, very conceptual rather than getting down into the granular details. As we go through this partnership with CSIA, we certainly intend to share really a wide variety of details, use case examples, and a lot of the insights that we see in the industries that we service. So please keep a lookout for that. But with that, for those of you who are not familiar with FreeWave Technologies, we're a Boulder, Colorado-based hardware manufacturer. Our history and pedigree has been in long-distance wireless connectivity for really remote site instrumentation, remote site automation, remote site control systems, any sort of process control that's happening in a remote location. Now, when we talk long distance and low power, today there are a lot of gateway devices that tout that as well. Our specific niche is really in the 40, 50 plus mile communication to remote sites that you see in maybe oil and gas, agriculture, some of the examples that I'm going to bring up in a little bit. But we've been around for just about 27 years at this point. We've taken our history in communication and edge devices in these remote locations, and about 3 years ago, we started breaking out really edge computing and edge device products by integrating a Linux platform on top of our existing hardware. I'm getting used to these virtual meetings, so I actually get to show off toys here. On top of our existing hardware, in addition to a basic telemetry radio for remote sites, this also functions as a Linux box, which we're going to talk about a lot today. So typical use cases for this, again, when I talk long distance remote sites, I mean very, very remote sites where environmental hazards are an issue, sites where typically you may not be able to leverage LTE networks or any other networks, in areas where you really need strong link integrity. We do quite a bit in oil and gas, smart agriculture, utilities and municipalities, particularly with water, wastewater, but we do a lot of transportation and ITS applications as well. Government, Fed, DOD, it really runs quite a gambit, but again, all under the notion that if it's a remote site, if it's long distance communications where power availability is limited, environmental conditions are limiting, that's typically where you would see a FreeWave device. So a very quick snapshot of the product family. We have a decently wide product breadth. I'm not going to talk about individual products or speeds and feeds on this call, but we primarily leverage an unlicensed 900 megahertz spectrum. We very much intend on breaking that out, but we have a range of, whether it's just an RF device, similar to this guy I'm holding up here, similar devices with integrated and modular stackable I/O, like this device here, or just standalone edge compute devices. We're certainly building out a portfolio that encompasses all of them, again, with the notion of remote site integration. Now, taking that a step further, I had mentioned the edge compute platform. We've probably all heard a lot about edge devices, edge computing. It's a pretty wide umbrella of possibilities, but what does that mean for us as a manufacturer, and what does that mean for the markets that we serve? Really, it's expanding the ecosystem to a handful of partners that previously were a little bit segregated and separate, are now starting to come together. We see a lot of them in the CSIA community, certainly folks like Inductive Automation, Indusoft, or Aviva now. The notion with edge compute is those devices can now, or I'm sorry, those platforms can now be hosted on your existing telemetry network, on your I/O network, on really any of the existing network that you may have in place or maybe looking to put in place. It helps consolidate devices and streamline the deployment not only of your network, but of third-party manufacturers as well. We have, in addition to that, seen some folks pick up quite a bit of the coding creativity, write their own apps in Java, Python, C++, whatever it may be, even something as simple as Node-RED or OpenPLC, which we'll talk a little bit about, and have some of those home-baked functions and logic controls, if you will. But where we typically fit in a network, again, very remote locations. Here's a well and pipeline measurement example where we will be that quote-unquote last mile piece of the network, building that gap, basically looking at how you get your data, and now with edge computing, what you do with that data, which typically comes down to our third-party software. So again, if you look at telemetry, if you look at remote site communications, it's applicable in a wide variety of market segments. I think in the control systems and SCADA space, we all know that what's applicable in terms of network diagram and architecture in one environment is very, very much applicable in the next. So these aren't piecemeal solutions that are very specific. It's very, very replicatable. And we're certainly seeing the industry adopt to new ways to replicate that as well. But what I'm here to talk about today are some of the integration challenges that come with IIoT, the Industrial Internet of Things. Again, another very, very significant buzz term that probably means something a little bit different to most people. So specific to us and what we come across, coming from a background very, very heavy in field services, working with the quote-unquote OT folks, the field services individuals, historically, what we've been looking at is very basic. What is the temperature on a very specific sensor? What is the volume of assets in any given tank, whether that's oil and gas, water, grain bin monitoring? What's the pressure on a very specific pipe? Very simple, very straightforward. But now with the availability and reliance on additional data points, I think we're all starting to see that, well, not even starting at this point, we've seen it expand to a multitude of different departments within the organizations that we're servicing. It's not just the field folks asking for those basic functions. You have purchasing asking for the longevity of any given device or sensor in a field. You have finance asking about a sensor's operational efficiencies. Even HR is asking about collaboration of sensors, who's out there in the field, who's collaborating, who's touching it. The point being is there is a multitude of different organizations or different departments within an organization looking for this level of data. So the question becomes, okay, well, how do we get it out of the field? How do we get that valuable data out of the field? And just as importantly, how do we get it to the right folks? Two very, very important questions to be asking. And again, at this point, there are a lot of different ways to approach that. And we're going to talk about some of the hurdles that we see in some of the solutions that our partners bring. So the main challenge in our space, the main challenges in our space, there are four different ones. There's the durability of the network, the performance as it continues to expand and we're pulling additional data points off of these devices, cost, which obviously plays a pretty significant role, and lastly, the notion of scalability. How can you make this scale? How can you expand on this in a bit larger environment? So talking about the first one, durability, if you look at this very basic, a little bit crude drawing, you have your devices in the field, your controllers in the field, whether you're leveraging classic SCADA environment, which I think most of us in this environment do, or if you're leveraging cloud services or both, what happens when there's an outage? If the reliance is much more critical on this data coming out, there are much more departments and individuals relying on this data. When an outage is never good. I think we're all clear on that. But it's more impactful as more individuals rely on this data. Now, what we've noticed with edge devices is coming out of this, in the event that there is an outage, which we all know does happen, with edge devices, you can keep that compute and that function on the edge on the devices themselves. When the data is restored, when that link integrity is restored, we can perform automated data reconciliation and make sure that an outage, although always unfortunate, is much less impactful by being able to perform certain functions, store certain data, and create that logic on the edge. Now, the next one is performance. Performance means a lot of different things, but specifically for the purposes of data communication, collection, and transport, what it comes down to here is with the propensity and the density of additional items, additional data points, that creates latency issues. And on networks that are specific to remote sites, as a lot of you probably know, with RF and communications in general, the further distance you're communicating, the lower throughput you're going to see on these devices. So it's not like we're setting up high-speed Wi-Fi networks or 802.11 networks. These are very much proprietary networks, whether it's on a device like ours, whether it's on an LTE system, whatever it may be. As you pull more data, latency certainly becomes an issue. Two ways to really combat this with edge computing. One is creating those real-time decisions and functions. If there's some actual logic that you can build into these devices, that can certainly help with that. The second is, and it's not listed here, it's on the next slide, a lot of you have probably been looking into MQTT type functions. There are a lot of providers pushing that notion and really spreading the word on that. That cuts down latency and bandwidth consumption significantly. MQTT is not something that's native on our devices. It's something that will be. But with our partners that we work with, you look at folks like Inductive Automation or Aviva or AutoSolve, that's certainly something that we can provide with our partners as well. That's probably been, since we started going down this path several years ago, the single most significant driver of edge devices and edge compute that we've seen within the industry. So cost. Again, always a big topic, always a big issue. I think we all know that we have more customers on shoestring budgets than we do on the other end of that spectrum, unfortunately. So how can you leverage edge devices to cut down costs? If you look at really cloud-only environments or SCADA historians, whatever it may be, data is expensive. It's getting a little bit more inexpensive, but whether it's transport, storage, whatever it may be, it is expensive. So if you take the notion of what can be done on the edge, again, if you're pushing local compute, if you're grooming the data, if you're performing very specific functions prior to that data being sent up and down the network, that cuts down on data consumption and likewise cuts down on cost. And again, the most significant one we see here is with MQTT protocols with store and forward functions, where rather than a typical poll and response type methodology, we're going to continuously check in with these devices periodically based on certain intervals that we as the user sets. It's going to be sending and publishing data based on metrics that are set by the user, by the operator itself. So if it's not sending data, it's going to be assumed that the data is coming off within a very specific range, and that cuts down cost accordingly. Again, another very big driver that we've been seeing in the industry. And lastly, scalability. We all see different opportunities and different projects of multiple scopes and sizes, from the very small to the incredibly large. As networks continue to scale out and continue to build out, again, that puts a lot of restraint on any historians, on any cloud compute, on any SCADA environment, SCADA networks. The larger the network, the more strained and the more limitations of scale there are. With edge compute functions that we see from hardware and software providers, you can support a wide variety of applications where these functions will be happening again, or taking place again on the edge of the network, rather than having to send things back to the cloud or your SCADA host every single time a certain function needs to take place. You can have the logic in the devices and the functions in the devices to execute on those in real time in the field, really making it the limitations of scale reduced significantly, making it much more easy to expand on any given network and the functions that are being performed by that network. So wrapping up that section, again, as I mentioned as I kicked this off, the goal here is, as we're introducing FreeWave to the CSIA community as a new partner, to keep things incredibly high level and very, very general. These are things that we are coming across on a daily basis. As everybody knows, as you get down to the more granular details by specific industry or specific customer segment, that's where you see the nuances really start to separate out. So as we engage with the CSIA community and continue sharing detail based on what we come across, we're going to continue sharing more of that granular detail, industry-specific detail. So we're eager to engage in conversations, see what you guys are seeing out there, and get ingrained with the community. So with that said, what I'm going to talk about now are a couple deployment scenarios. These are much more conceptual in nature than anything else. We're seeing some pretty neat things come out, whether it's customers taking the initiative to do so, partners taking the initiative to do so, or a lot of folks taking advantage of some of the recent downtime to get a little creative with some of the functions that they're doing on edge devices. So one of the things we want to talk about, and obviously as a FreeWave employee, I'm going to make the FreeWave plugs here, but a lot of this stuff can be done with a variety of other devices, is leveraging these existing systems and the fact that a Debian Linux platform is basically a sandbox to write and perform your functions. So you can take a device similar to this one here. For those of you who aren't familiar with this, this is a base radio right here. This is a basic 900 megahertz SCADA data radio, if you will, with the edge compute platform, and a series of stackable I/O modules that come in a variety of I/O layouts, and really you can stack these up to get nearly 150 I/O points, which in most cases is excessive, but it is possible. So if you were to take something like this in any given environment and put your coder hat on, whether it's you're getting in there and you're proficient in Java, which I personally am not, or you're using a platform like Node-RED, which is becoming a lot more popular, even myself as a hobbyist, it's always fun to play around with. And can you write actual functions in here? Now, I wouldn't be suggesting something like this for a very mission critical application, because if it's something homegrown and home baked, security issues and scalability issues pop up. But we've seen some people get very, very creative with this, basically taking very simple if this then that type functions, building algorithms around it so that they can create that logic in an edge device itself, in an I/O device or a radio device itself, create the logic in these devices to perform specific functions, whether that's on the gateway device itself, whether that's on the specific endpoint. You can do that in conjunction with leveraging an inductive system or an Aviva system or whoever it may be, AutoSol, et cetera, and providing that intelligence where you may have an unintelligent network that needs very simple logic functions. You don't have to rip out existing systems. You can leverage what's already in place if you have, again, a FreeWave network or anybody else's network that may be in place there. Again, we've seen MQTT take off very, very significantly. I remember less than 2 years ago when it was a very high level concept and people started talking about it a little bit more here and there. FreeWave being very strong in oil and gas markets, it was almost an overnight phenomenon where it was a very high level concept, and then a month later we saw it readily deployed in the field, which was pretty unique coming from an industry that typically moves very slowly, how quickly people adopt to this. But leveraging MQTT, again, as a lot of people probably already know, or if you're a little bit less familiar with it, moving from a poll response type mechanism to a publish subscribe type mechanism not only gets the right data to the right individuals, but it cuts down significantly on the latency on the network. So obviously, as you can imagine, as an RF manufacturer, we see a lot of value in that and and the implications that that has for our customers. let alone the implications that it has for installers and integrators with how they can optimize either existing networks. We see MQTT functions going into brownfield opportunities and applications all the time, let alone greenfield. So again, something of very strong significance that we're seeing really become an industry standard. And very lastly here, again, touting the FreeWave flag here, you always got to make the FreeWave plug, right? What can be done with our devices themselves? And you can perform very basic I/O functions, basically taking analog in, digital in, and pushing out feeds, digital out. Whether that's implementing MQTT functions, we're going to have a Modbus to MQTT function within the device that'll come standard. We're going to have betas here very soon. Whether it's leveraging those third-party partners, we work very closely with a wide variety of them, especially those who are very well ingrained in the CSIA community, or custom applications. I think one of the most interesting things, kind of one of the best kept secrets right now, is a group called OpenPLC. It's a very hobbyist approach to really creating logic functions on edge devices. FreeWave has become a sponsor of that group, and we're going to be publishing really some educational and informative video segments that will really talk about how you can leverage things like OpenPLC, Node-RED to perform and provide that logic in an edge device. So very cool stuff. I'm personally excited to see the industry start moving this way. Again, like I said earlier, I think we all see it's an industry, we all play in an industry that moves at a very slow pace, and we're starting to see it scale up quite a bit, which has opened the door for a lot of creativity and a lot of I'm blanking on the word, but there's certainly a lot of creative approaches coming out for what can be done with edge devices that are out of the norm. And with that said, that's going to wrap up my segment here. Hopefully pretty short and sweet for you guys, and I'll let you get back to your Tuesdays. Again, the intention here was to give you a brief introduction to who we are as FreeWave, as a new CSIA partner, to share some insights on some of the hurdles that we're seeing in deploying IIoT networks, or networks that are really requiring a much more significant amount of data transport and consumption, and some of the neat things that we're starting to see in the industry itself. So a little bit about working with us as an RF provider. We definitely engage in field support and site surveys. We can layer the edge compute function on top of that and bring in our partners if and where necessary. We provide product and sales trainings. We're actually currently releasing a handful of web-based modules, which are pretty neat. They're very short modules for very specific functions, and we provide full service trainings remotely on that. So if you have the time and the interest, I certainly urge anybody to check that out. Working out with us in the field and on the sales side, we certainly provide project registration support. If there's a project that you're actively engaged in and helping position the FreeWave brand, we certainly wanted to credit those who are doing the work there. And you know, we have a pretty strong base of regional sales support and market and vertical specific sales support. So with that said, closing thought here, we'd like to, as we get engaged with the CSIA community, we want to make sure that we create a platform where folks can get their hands on the product, start playing around with them, whether it's just simple RF bench testing, or what I personally think is more interesting, the edge compute aspect of it and the various things that can be done there. It's a pretty wide sandbox there. So follow up with us, get your hands on some development kits. We certainly want to engage. We want to see what kind of creativity is out there, and help contribute to the community as best we can. So with that said, thank you for listening. You'll certainly see our brand pop up more and more. You'll probably hear my name and lovely voice here more and more as we get engaged. So with that, I'll open it to any questions. I'll have to see. So Colin, if you're still on, I don't know if those pop up in the Q&A section or.
Yes. So yeah, we have the Q&A section at the bottom. If any questions come in, we will take those. Just
Okay.
while we're waiting, I want to remind everybody that we're going to have a CSIA happy hour on Thursday for members. It'll be 5 to 6:30, I believe. Be sure to join us. That'll be a good way to see everybody, see people you've been missing. And then we also have ITR Economics. I believe it's May 6th. We have some other events coming up. Check out the CSIA events calendar. Be sure to bookmark some of the things that you might want to see in the future.
All right. And I'll certainly be on that happy hour as well. So I'm looking forward to that. And that'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
So bear with me while I'm trying to navigate Zoom. I'm a rookie here. So,
Worries.
all right. So I'm not seeing any of the questions popping up. So with that said, if there are questions and I'm just, I can chalk this up to user, please feel free to reach out, tbattaglia@freewave.com. I can certainly share my contact details with Colin and the whole CSIA community. Reach out to us individually or reach out to the main line here. We're always happy to help. And again, parting thought, as a new member here, we very much just want to engage with the community. We want to make sure that we can share some of our insights, pick up some of the insights from the other folks in the community, and help drive innovation forward. So I very much look forward to engaging with everybody. And again, feel free to reach out, whether it's on technology specific, product specific details, or just to talk shop about the industry. Myself and the rest of us here at FreeWave are certainly eager to engage.
Thanks, Tony. And on behalf of CSIA, I'd like to officially thank you and everybody that attended the webinar. If you wouldn't mind, when you close out, there'll be a quick eval. If you could just share some thoughts with us, we would greatly appreciate it. And I wanted to remind you that tomorrow I will send out a link to this video. And you can also view different webinars you have missed on the webinar archive page on controlsys.org. Once again, thank you for joining us, and everyone have a good day. Thank you so much, Tony.
Thank you. Take care, everybody.